The story begins with a time travel to 1995. In a quiet town in New Jersey, we meet a high school student named Chris Brender. Chris is a kind and open guy, but outwardly he is overweight, with fluffy hair and braces on his teeth. Because of his appearance, he often feels insecure and awkward. He's madly in love with his best friend, Jamie Polamino, a school cheerleader, popular and very beautiful. She's popular not only because of her looks. Jamie is really kind and treats Chris warmly. We find Chris in his room, a place that is especially important to him. He holds her graduation album in his hands and, having gathered his courage, writes a long, heartfelt message on one of the pages. In it, he confesses his innermost secret. He loves her and dreams of being with her more than friends. After finishing the letter, Chris gets on his bike and rides to the prom. He's going to tell Jaime about the letter he left in her sketchbook. But just as he's about to speak, the door swings open. Tim stumbles in. A popular athlete, former Jaime, and a rare boar. He bursts in before Chris can say a word. James tells Tim to leave. When he finally leaves, Chris picks up what appeared to be her album from the couch. He is ready to read the letter aloud. There's another knock on the door, and another guy named Dusty enters, also visiting Jamie. Chris freezes in anticipation. He hopes to hear what Jamie has to say after hearing Chris' words. But suddenly he's terrified. He can't leave. He realizes that he has the wrong album in his hands. It seemed like Tim was playing a prank on him. He maliciously changed the album and now holds in his hands the very copy with Chris' confession. In a panic, Chris rushes down the stairs, but it's too late. A crowd of classmates gathered around Tim. He sits in the center and reads Chris's personal sincere letter at the top of his voice, exposing his feelings to ridicule in front of everyone. The situation is aggravated by the fact that the whole crowd is looking out the window and continues to laugh at him. Pushed to the limit, crying with resentment and rage, Chris makes a promise to himself. He shouts that he will leave the city, become successful, and prove to everyone that they were wrong about him. 10 years pass. We find ourselves in sunny Los Angeles, and the old Chris Brender is no longer recognizable. He became a slender, strong, and confident man. Now he is a top manager of a major music label. His life is full of social parties and fleeting romances. Pre-Christmas week, Chris's boss, Casey, assigns him an important task. Chris is due to fly to Paris with new pop star Samantha James to sign a contract with her. Samantha is a moody and selfish singer who, to put it mildly, has little talent. But there are a lot of ambitions. Chris still remembers their terrible date in the past, which ended up in the hospital for him. That's why he doesn't like the idea of this trip at all. However, he goes to meet Samantha and finds her in the studio, where she is rehearsing one of her ridiculous pop songs and, as usual, making a drama out of thin air. Later that night, they fly on a private jet to Paris. But Samantha is starting to get more and more stupid. The height of her idiocy comes when she decides to heat a burrito wrapped in foil right in the microwave. Of course, this causes a fire. The pilots are forced to make an emergency landing. To Chris' horror, the plane lands in New Jersey, right next to his hometown, where he vowed never to return. Now that the plane is under repair, Chris has no choice. I have to take a moody pop star to her parents' house. His mom Carol is shocked and absolutely delighted. She hadn't seen her son in 10 years. She starts to squeal with joy and then turns to tears of happiness. Chris feels like he needs to get out of the house and have some fun. He goes to the city and runs into his friends from school, Carl and Darla. It turns out they're married now. Chris meets Jamie Palomino. She works behind the counter. When she sees him, her first reaction is to hide. But he walks right up to her. Their meeting is full of surprise and unexpectedly warm hugs. Feeling his old insecurities returning, Chris pretends that he is all cool and says that he only stopped by for one night. But he can't hide the fact that he still has feelings for her. He's about to leave, but suddenly turns around and suddenly invites her on a date, lying that his flights might be delayed. The date is set. Now it's up to him to decide what to do with Samantha. He embarks on a trick and tries to play on her vanity. He assures her that the small town is full of fans who are crazy to meet her. He offers to arrange a large-scale meeting with fans at a local mall, promising that this will make their year unforgettable. Samantha is hesitant at first, but Chris insists and ends up almost shoving her into the car. They go to an old familiar cafe, a place full of memories of their teenage years and their former friendship. The evening passes quietly, with cheerful laughter and stories from the past. Meanwhile, Samantha is immersed in songwriting. She is inspired by the people in the mall, watching them come and go. She has a wild imagination, but she lacks the skills to realize her ideas by making good songs out of them. Saying goodbye to friends turns into awkwardness. Chris is too self-confident. He bends down, hoping for a romantic kiss, but instead gets a simple friendly hug. There are no subtexts at all. "You fool, fool, fool," is a funny and shameful moment. Jamie is coming back. She forgot her gloves in his car and finds Chris in a complete collapse. He sits alone, lost in his own worries. She's completely at a loss. Burning with shame, Chris silently hands her the gloves and slowly lifts the window, avoiding her gaze. Everything indicates that the day was terrible. In order to somehow come to his senses, he goes to the dental clinic to his friend Clark and breaks down, talks about everything that went wrong. Chris returns home later and finds Samantha. She's goofing off, as usual. Did she get a concussion after falling in the mall? However, Chris loses his temper and gets mad at his brother Mike. He obviously hadn't followed her. At the skating rink, they encounter several of James' students. At first, the children are friendly and invite Chris to play a fun hockey match. But spoiled by the lavish life in Los Angeles, Chris is clearly not ready for ice skating. He is clumsy and has difficulty skating, which is why the team he was assigned to starts complaining loudly about how useless he is. Humiliated by the children's words and his own awkwardness, Chris loses his composure. He awakens to an aggressive and competitive nature, developed in the harsh world of show business. The result is not long in coming. Chris gets seriously injured and leaves in an ambulance. He lies motionless, with an oxygen mask on his face, unable to utter a word. By this time, Dusty has already sat down with Jaime and is flirting with her, claiming that he has been in love with her for many years. Chris is taken to the hospital, where he is being treated by his friend Clark, who works as a dentist. And only now Chris can somehow honestly talk about how all this is putting pressure on him and how he really feels. After leaving the hospital, Chris returns home and finds himself in an extremely strange situation. His brother Mike is giving Samantha a back massage wrapped in just a towel. The purest scene from any teenager's wet fantasy. And judging by the look on his face, Mike likes it a lot more than she does. Chris abruptly stops everything, which infuriates Samantha because she obviously liked it all. That same night, Samantha dresses up. He packs his bags and declares that he will fly to Paris, as planned. But Chris insists that she perform again, for the sake of her fans from this city. In fact, he just wants to get rid of her so he can focus on his date with Jamie. And he pulls her out of the house again. It's already a star. True, it's not high-flying, but that's the details. Chris feels uneasy when he sees Dusty coming into the house with Jamie. The evening quickly turns into an annoying surreation. Dusty is now not only an old pain in the ass from his school days, but also his rival in the fight for Jamie's heart. The situation finally gets out of control when Dusty invites Chris' mom, Carol, to them. Chris feels like a stranger in this house, as if everything around him is mocking him on purpose. But when Dusty gets out, Chris and Jamie finally have the opportunity to really bond. They spend hours talking about their school years and former friendships. They watch old videos, and every moment is saturated with a simple fact. They were made for each other. Chris assigns Mike a simple, but very important task. Keep Samantha entertained, and no matter what happens, don't let her find out where Chris is. But Samantha hears everything. Meanwhile, Chris starts having problems. Mike left the car window open, and now the interior is covered with snow. The car won't start. As a result, Chris has to ride a bike in the cold. When he finally gets there, chilled, his hopes are dashed again. Dusty is already there and back in the spotlight. Overcome with jealousy and tired of what is happening, Samantha breaks down. In a fit of dramatic madness, she flies a car right into Jaime's yard, demolishes the Christmas decorations, and causes complete chaos. Humiliated to the limit, Chris lies alone in bed. Soon Jamie knocks on his door. He opens the door and tries to apologize, but she says she's not mad and didn't come to blame him. He lets her into the house, and they spend the night talking, without strain, with the same ease and warmth that have always been between them. The next morning, Jamie tells Darlie's friend about the night before, and Chris goes to Clark for advice. Jamie admits that her feelings have long outgrown friendship. Clark, as a wise friend, says that all that prevents Chris from being with her is a bad sense of time and old mistakes. Feeling completely hopeless, Chris gets drunk and shows up at Jamie's bar. There he finds her in Dusty's company. When Jamie gently refuses Dusty, he leaves in a rage. This leads to a big fight between Chris and Jamie. Chris angrily accuses her of still keeping him in the friend zone. Jealousy inspired me to create my best song, which is full of passion and anger. Realizing that he no longer needs such a life, Chris refuses Samantha, who gives him another, unequivocal hint. He finally realizes how empty his life is and realizes the only person who really matters to him is Jamie Palomino. In a last-ditch attempt to fix everything, Chris flies back to New Jersey. He finds Jamie and, without masks and pathos, confesses the truth to her. He always loved her. Turns out she feels the same way. They kiss deeply for real. And 3 young hockey players are watching this with expressions of disgust, concluding the film with a funny but very warm scene.